Hi everybody and welcome back. Alright, we are starting to get something that looks like a game happening now. Now I just started the game and I rode up on the red elevator and then I jumped onto the tile when it was red, but then I have not moved since, and there's a couple of things that we want to change to try and make it a bit better. Now the first one is the fact that I can just stand on this tile endlessly and wait until it turns red and then just run back and forward and get points, which sort of defeats the purpose of jumping from tile to tile. The other thing is that even if I'm standing on a red tile here and I want to jump somewhere else, when the tiles change, they all change, so it's really just a, see, I can get my points here and then just stop moving. And so even if I jump, for example, to try and get to a red square and it changes, I don't know whether it's going to be red, so it's a bit of a guess, and that's not really good gameplay. So we're going to, in this video, we're going to only change some of the tiles, and to let the players know which tiles are being changed, we're going to make them flash on and off 2 or 3 times before they change, so they know if they're on a tile that's about to change, they can try and get to one of their own colour. And then we'll make those tiles that do change disappear, so that if you're standing on one, you will fall to the ground. Alright, so to do that, we're going to make some changes to our change tile script. So come into our function in here, functions mod, and we want to, I'll just get rid of these windows, and we want to come down, right down the bottom to our change tiles function, and we're going to make some changes in here. Now currently we get all the tiles when we change, and then we were setting back the can collide and transparency in here while we change the colors. However, for the purposes of this, we want to do this part before we do anything else. So just after we get all of our tiles, just drop down a couple of lines and we'll make a comment, reset all tiles. So the first part of this will be to reset all the tiles. So we'll say for I equals 1, and for all the tiles, do, and we'll just simply cut these 2 lines out of here and place them in there. Alright, so that's the purpose of this first loop, is just to reset the tiles. Now we'll create another loop just below this one, where we're going to select which tiles we want to change. Alright, so this part will be the select tiles to change, and we'll create a selected tiles table, and we'll make it an empty table, so each time this loops back it gets reset back to being empty before we fill it up again. And we'll create another loop in here, so for I equals 1, comma, and we'll say now we'll create a variable for how many tiles to change. We've currently got 25 tiles, but let's just change, say not half, let's say 8. Alright, so up the top we'll create a variable right up the top, and we'll say local number of tiles to change. Alright, quite long, but we'll set this to 8, and you can change this to whatever number you want later if you like, but let's say we start off with 8. We'll come back to our function. Alright, so we're at this just underneath the selected tile, so number of tiles to change, so this will go through, loop through 8 times, and we'll say do, and inside of here what we want to do is get a random number, so we'll say local random number will be math.random between 1 and however many tiles there are, so all tiles. Alright, and this will form the index that we want to select, and then we're going to insert into our selected tile, so table.insert, and selected tiles will be the table we want to insert, and the value will be all tiles random number. Now just below this, once we've used up, say it was tile 23, then we don't want, when we run around again, we don't want it to pick 23 again, otherwise it won't work. So we're going to remove now that tile from all tiles. Now keep in mind that it doesn't delete it out of the game, it's just out of this table, and when the function runs again, it fills up all tiles again. Alright, so we'll say table dot remove, and what we want to remove from all tiles, and the index will be the random number. Okay, so we will never pick the same tile twice when we're picking our 8 tiles to change. Alright, so moving down a little bit, we want to now change the selected tiles. Okay, so we'll write a for loop here for I equals 1, and then for however many tiles are in here, selected tiles do. And now this is where we will simply do what we were doing here. We'll take these lines out of here and put them into here, and then we'll get rid of that for loop just for the time being. Alright, so we're down to the end of the function, but we're going to now that we've got our tiles and they're changed, we're going to make them flash before they change. Alright, so flash tiles before they change. So the local wait time I set here will be equal to 10, and we're going to use a repeat and then task.wait for a second, and then down to until, right, wait time equals 0. So then inside of this loop we're going to reduce our wait time each time it loops, so wait time will be minus equals 1, and just make a note here that the tiles will flash 3 times using the code we're going to put in here. So this is going round and round every second, and wait time is reducing. So what we'll do is we'll say if wait time, alright, is less than or equal to 2, so we're down to the last couple of seconds, then we'll run a loop in here, so for I equals 1 to the number of selected tiles, do, and we're going to change the selected tiles, all of them, their transparency, equal to 0.9, so they're only just visible, and then outside of that loop we'll wait for task.wait for 0.1 of a second, and then we're going to do the opposite thing in here. So you can take a copy of this for loop and just place it below the wait and change the transparency at the end here to be 0. Alright, so it'll change them all very briefly so you can hardly see them, then wait, and then it'll change them back, and that will give the illusion of the flashing on and off. Alright, now once they've finished flashing, this loop will end, and we can come down here and we're going to say all selected tiles disappear. Alright, and let players on them fall. So we'll say for I equals 1 for the number of selected tiles, do, and selected tiles, let's move up a little bit, I dot transparency equals 1, so that it's completely invisible, and then selected tiles I dot can collide, okay, equals false. And after we have done that, we'll wait for 1 second down the bottom here, and then we will reset selected tiles to visible and solid. Alright, so we can basically take a copy of this and put it here, and we'll just change it to the opposite, so from 1 to 0 and back to true. And right at the bottom here, we don't need this task wait anymore. And in fact, what we're going to do is, rather than calling this from here, we're going to call it from our tile script. So I'd like you to just delete this task.spawn here, and we're going to initialize the game from our tile script. So that's a big long change to our function there. All right, so I'll just scroll through it. But if you commented it out, it makes sense, and if you carefully type everything in, then we should be good to go. Now, the last thing we need to do is, as I said, open up our tile script, and right at the very top, okay, so above the for loop, just make a couple of lines space, we're going to initialize tiles when the game loads. Alright, because now the reason we're doing that is because when we made changes here, because we're just selecting some tiles to change, it's only going to pick out 8 that will change colour, and the rest will be all grey. So we need to run just change all the tile colours once before that starts running, if that makes sense. Alright, so we'll run a for loop here, so for I equals 1, and we will need to get all of our tiles here, so local all tiles equals workspace dot tile, all tiles, and we'll get children. Alright, so for all tiles, do, and we will set all tiles I dot can collide equal to true, and all tiles I dot transparency, dot transparency equal to 0, so they're all solid and you can see them. And then we'll do the pick a random color. So we will need up the top here, we'll come over and grab our game colors, because we'll need access to that. So grab a copy of that from the functions mod, and we'll add it just up the top here. And then we can just write these lines out again. So local random index equals math.random, and we will put that between 1 and the number of game colors, and below this all tiles I dot brick color equals brick color dot new and game colors with the random index. Alright, and this will run through and initialize, and then the very last thing we need to do is just task.spawn our anonymous function and call funmod dot change tiles, and we don't need to pass anything in, and that'll just run once, and then it'll go through and do the rest of our tag in here. Alright, so let's give that a test. So we'll come up and click on File and Save, and let's play. And I'll just bring up my output window there. Alright, so we're in the game, and I can double jump, which is good. And I'll try to land on, there we go, I'm on my colour. Now let's watch to see what happens here. Alright, you can see the changing, and the one I'm standing on, it didn't flash and change. Alright, so I can still run back and forward after it resets, which takes quite a bit of time, but there we go. The one I was standing on changed and then went back. So it's providing us with more of a challenge now than it did before. Whoops, I just wasn't quite in enough time to get that one. Change to green, and let's go on green, and I've got on to green, and that one's not changing, so I can land on it. So players can target where they want to get to, and if this is another thing, whoops, I was going to say you could just jump straight onto an available color if there's one there, and you can go from there. Alright, so we are getting very close to having our game up and running, where it's ready to go. So in the next video, what we'll do is we'll add a new feature up here, a level, where players can level up when they get to a certain number of points. Okay, so we'll stop the video there, stop the game, sorry, and we'll increase our version to 15, and we're good to go. So I shall see you in the next lesson.